You're listening to TehachaPod with Key Budge, Corey Costello, and Greg Garrett.
Well, it's TehachaPod time again. Key Budge, Greg Garrett, Corey Costello. We haven't said that in how long?
It's fun to be sitting in this seat again, actually.
It is.
I've missed a couple.
I think the last time we were all together to do one was sometime in August.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have everyone back in the room together.
And I had the privilege of listening to the September 11th look back, and you guys did a great job. Yeah.
Thank you. It was emotional. I don't know about for you, Corey, but
yeah.
For me, it brought back those memories of where I was 20 years ago, just getting to talk about it and haven't done that, thinking back, to my law enforcement days. But that was something that was, I did take that moment. And
Can't
on the
believe
11th,
it's been 20 years.
Yeah, and on September 11th, I did take that moment to reflect and make sure that, the memories of, what I had, I was able to kind of just sit back and reflect on the pain that people went through, that still are feeling.
Yeah. I unpacked a lot and things. I mean, even the show, I remembered stuff that I'd kind of forgotten, And on September 11th, my dad still has the flag that he put out on September 11th, and he puts it out every year, and that's just his flag. And so I had talked about on the show, like me and my roommates duct taping an American flag out of our window in San Diego because that's all we had. And I thought, man, I wish I still had that flag. And I never thought about really keeping it, And my dad kept his. It would have been cool to still have that one, from September 11th, 20 years ago. But and so on that day, that's what I thought about the show that we did and making that comment and then seeing other people with those flags from 20 years ago.
And we did get some nice feedback from the community as well. So I'm glad we did it because I was ready to postpone it. And Corey goes, no, we got to do this. Let's just, you and I sit here and
we'll lay it down and see how it goes.
And it was good for me to express that. Yeah. I felt good about it.
But one of the strengths we have in Tehachapi is moving on, right?
Right.
We learn and we move on. And we have Edward Martin today with us, the new Adventist Health COO, I guess, is what we would call you?
Administrative Director of Operations, which is roughly the COO.
Okay, good. Well, we're excited to talk to Edward today about what's going on.
Yeah, Edward, welcome to TehachaPod.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to be here, Key and Corey and Greg. I'm absolutely blessed to actually be here in Tehachapi and to be a part of Adventist Health Tehachapi Valley and to work with such an incredible team.
Well, we've talked many times about how blessed we are in Tehachapi to have Adventists here in town caring for us. But your journey to Tehachapi is quite the story. So why don't we talk about where you came from and how you landed here in our little blessed valley? Sure.
Just a little bit of a background. I'm actually from Washington, D.C.
We won't hold that against you.
Oh, you want to hold that against me? So I grew up in Washington, D.C., lived in Maryland for some time, and then went off to high school in Pennsylvania, and then college in Alabama. And then grad school out here to California, went to Loma Linda University, got a master's in healthcare administration, and then got connected to the chancellor at the time for the university, Dr. Richard Hart. Was approached about taking up leadership position within Zambia, which is
Zambia, the country.
Zambia, the country, right, which is central southern Africa. Mm-hmm. So, I was sort of kind of young in healthcare administration and ended up going out to Zambia, oversaw about 15 healthcare institutions. We had 3 hospitals, 3 clinics, 9 rural healthcare centers, and did that for about 5 years and had a wonderful time, got a chance to really improve the care of the people within Zambia. And then on top of that, also to establish a lot of governmental connections. The government actually even reached out to our institution and say, hey, listen, we really appreciate what you're doing for our people. We would like you to go ahead and expand that same level of care to our prisons. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up we're the first institution that was called into the penitentiaries to start providing eye and dental care. It was such a huge blessing, and they requested us to go and roll that out throughout the whole country.
And this was part of the Adventist healthcare system.
Yeah, this was a part of Adventist Health International, but the Adventist healthcare system in Zambia. And so shortly after that, I went to Malawi. I headed a large hospital in southern Malawi in the rural areas. It's a 240-bed hospital. We had very, very sick, poor patients. But I had an incredible staff that I was actually working with. Just really, really blessed to be a part of that and to find ways in which we can creatively love our patients.
I want to build on that for a second because you talked about, you've used the term rural when you're international work.
Correct.
Now this is the American definition of rural access is what we have in Tehachapi.
That's correct.
Can you give some comparisons, because I know they're night and day between what the rural looks like in Malawi or Zambia compared to the American definition.
And that was going to be my question too, because the challenges that Africa is experiencing compared to what a challenge in the United States or maybe Tehachapi, maybe a compare and contrast. So maybe a two-pronged question for you.
Yeah, so great question. I'm going to give you a good example of what rural is within Africa. One of my hospitals at the time was in the western province of Zambia. It's called Yuka Hospital. In order to access that hospital, you would take basically a bus, travel about 9 hours out to a place called Mangu, which was the closest quote-unquote major city, it wasn't much of a city, but it was the closest major city that they actually had. Then, on top of that, you would jump in a boat, and you would take a boat, and it would take roughly, all depending on what your outboard motor was, anywhere from about 4 to 5 hours. So you're zipping through the Zambezi tributaries in order to be able to access the hospital. The early quote-unquote missionaries, I think back in the 50s and 60s, it would actually take them about 2 days in a dugout canoe trying to row to actually make it out to the hospital. When you get out to the hospital, because it's so difficult to access that hospital, you found that there were challenges with supplies. Mm-hmm. You found that there were a lot of doctors that didn't necessarily want to work out there because its access was a huge problem. Electricity was a huge problem. There's a lot of load shedding that kind of takes place, or you just don't necessarily have electricity. Just some of the normal services
that we take for granted in the States.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. They just weren't available.
Wow.
Just weren't available. At many of our rural health centers, when I first got into the country and I started visiting the rural health centers, you would be traveling almost 50 miles inland on really, really bad roads. And there is no UPS, there's no FedEx that goes to these spots. And so usually, of course, they're terribly understaffed. A lot of times you don't have an advanced practice provider like your mid-levels, such as your nurse practitioners and your PAs. There isn't anybody out there. Sometimes you'll just have an EVS person that's actually seeing patients because that's the only individual that's available.
EVS stands for?
It's environmental services.
Okay.
So you have environmental services trying to provide care to the patients within their community. Not all the time. Sometimes you may get lucky and you may have something like a CNA, a certified nurse assistant or something like that. But it's very, very difficult in those areas. But, people are trying to do the best that they actually can to provide the best level of care. So
I think the medical industry it's a calling.
Yes, it is.
I was on the board for a while at Adventist Health and blessed to be on the board. And what I learned, I think, that really stood out to me was the people that are in the industry, they don't do it for the money. Yeah. They do it for the love.
Correct.
And for the care. And
Correct.
They have such compassion.
Yeah.
It's very emotional for me, actually, because what I saw and what I experienced and the part of what I did, which was tiny, 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 but it was eye-opening to me.
Yeah. What I realized is that it is great. It's an absolute calling. And sometimes it can be a thankless job. However, I oftentimes think in every institution that I walk into, I believe that my calling is to bring hope. We may not necessarily be always able to change the life of the individual physically, but if we can extend hope to that individual, if we can let that individual know that there are going to be better days, and if we can create a little bit of heaven while we actually have them, then it's almost as though we have kind of served our purpose.
Right. God has a plan. There's a plan in everything that's
Correct.
happening.
Correct.
And especially now with COVID, it has to be incredibly hard or harder for obviously the patients, but the staff.
Yes.
Right? Because you don't have the normal operations. You're seeing people struggle.
Correct.
You're seeing some people pass away.
Yes.
And it must be incredibly hard.
Yeah, and it has. But you know what? At Adventist Health, Tehachapi Valley, as I kind of do my rounds and I'll go into the ICU and I'll take a look, check in staff there as well as med-surg 1, med-surg 2. And it doesn't matter which department I actually go into, I'm still seeing employees that are smiling. Mm-hmm. And that they're stretched, but they are working to the best of their ability in order to provide the highest quality care to our patients. And so even when it does get difficult and it gets hard, they oftentimes don't necessarily show it. And so I'm really, really blessed to actually be a part of this and to witness our frontline staff caring for our community and ensuring that regardless of who comes through those doors, that we are attentive and compassionate to their needs.
Mm-hmm. And we have so many people in this community that are rock solid behind the hospital.
Yeah.
The board of directors, the philanthropy, Jim and Lisa Sear, we mentioned them, just giant donors. You can't do things without money.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And you've got Art 2021, you've got Christina Scrivener,
Correct.
People that are pulling things together. We have this new CT machine that's going to be coming online. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we have been really, really blessed. And, just as you kind of mentioned, all of our donors, I got a chance to meet Lisa Sear yesterday. Just really, really blessed. Also,
and they don't do it for the recognition. They do it because they care.
They care, yeah,
deeply care for this community.
And even as I think about like the Guild, mm-hmm. the Guild has been a
5 cents at a time, right?
Yes.
5 cents, 25 cents at a time, and that translates.
I see those donations.
Millions of dollars.
Oh, they're going to. The Guild's giving $800,000 for imaging equipment. You're like, wait, a thrift store? It's amazing the amount of money they can generate for the hospital.
I was just so blown away. Yeah. Because when I saw, initially when I kind of rolled up into Tehachapi and I saw this
little house,
and I saw that little house, I said, I didn't understand how much of an impact that little house has on the quality of care that we're able to go ahead and provide at our hospital, and all the supplies and equipment that we're able to go and purchase, and the wonderful individuals that are serving in that institution cheerfully, and with whatever little resources come about, they're willing to go ahead and help the hospital.
And it's two-pronged because what they provide is a service that people need. I mean, growing up in this community, when I was a kid, my family was very poor. I bought all my clothes at the Guild for the longest time. My mom and I joke about it. Our picture was up. They took our picture in the 80s, and it must have been up for like a decade.
Wow!
Of her and I there, and they did something and they put it on the bulletin board, and it was there for decades. And because that's where we shop, we did not have money. I didn't have money for new clothes, and that's where we went. And so there's still a lot of those folks that that do that. And then there's the other side where now old things are new again, right? And so it's like, I'm going to go find my next antique treasure and turn it into something else. And so there's a reused market out there. And so
it's a destination.
They provide a double service.
They provide wheelchairs free of charge, right? Wow. You can go there and, when my dad was sick before he passed away, we went by and they loaned us a wheelchair and all kinds of different things, and free of charge. Yeah. Right. And my goodness, it's crazy.
I have never seen this model. I've never seen that model before.
Yeah.
I don't even know exactly how I would even kind of share that with my friends, but it's mind blowing to know that you have a Guild out there. And Randy has been doing such a fantastic job and working with her team to ensure that, again, the hospital is being supported. And so we really thank individuals like that. Again, the Sears, the Dreyers, I believe as well.
There's so many.
There's so many individuals.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And again, none of them do it for the recognition. They do it because they care. And
absolutely.
The hospital is such a community-based. I know, Edward, you and I have talked about this before in other Adventist leadership, but the hospital is part of the community fabric. It's a pillar.
Correct.
So can we talk a little bit about the hospital and how it's integrated and wants to be more a bigger part of the community?
So I remember when I was kind of taking up leadership position out here, my boss, David Butler, he mentioned, he was like, the hospital is deeply connected to the community. Now, I had never been in any institution where the hospital was deeply connected to the community. And when I came out here and I began to actually see the connections, you had individuals within the community that took an active interest in the services and the development of the hospital. And I realized that as a hospital, this hospital cannot survive without the community's involvement. And so we are incredibly, incredibly grateful. And, as I'm kind of stepping into my new position, I've only been out there for roughly about 3 weeks. It's important for me to actually know what our community needs. Not that we can actually address every single need within our community, but I'd like to go ahead and know, how can we best serve you?
Well, that's a perfect thing, because it's that spoke in the wheel, right? It's like the school district, the Warrior Booster Club. There are churches on every corner. It's what makes a community healthy.
Yeah.
And so, I'm sorry, I interrupted you, but go
ahead.
No. It's so important to have a healthy community with community involvement, because you cannot just have government do the work.
Correct.
Or Adventist Corp do the work.
Correct.
It's got to be part of the fabric.
Correct. And
well, I was going to say, because we've had the chance to talk before, and the one big takeaway is you live here. You chose to move here to this community. So it's different than what we've seen sometimes in the past, where someone's commuting back and forth. You've decided to live here and become a part of the fabric of the community.
And you're absolutely right. I moved out here about 3 weeks ago, and I was excited to actually come to Tehachapi. I live here. I eat here. I sleep here. I attend. I think I got a chance to go ahead and attend the stargazing for the first time. Last Saturday night. And just to really kind of connect with a lot of our community.
And I saw
members.
you working the booth at the Adventist booth at the farmers market
Correct.
on Thursdays.
Yep. I'm looking forward to actually working the booth a little bit more. I know that I think the farmers market probably will be coming to a close
through the end of September.
Through
But
the end
that's
of
one of the
September.
reasons why we have a city booth. Corey, Key, Tori, Ashley. We man that booth because we want people to come up and talk to us about a project or what's going on, or it's part of that being available.
Yeah, and what is interesting, and I'm really kind of glad that I was able to actually man the booth, because I met a lot of folks from the community, and they began to actually share their experiences with me. And the beautiful thing about it is that they talk about the love and the compassion that they've experienced with a lot of our staff. And I mean, that is a huge encouragement for me. But they also mentioned, hey, you know what? We need you all to expand those services out to Cal City and some of those other areas, and we'd like to see more providers. So that's helpful for me, because I can then take that back to our leadership to say, hey, listen, there are needs in some of these areas. How can we be of service to our community?
And I know we have a clinic here in Tehachapi. We have a clinic in I say we. Yeah. Isn't that cool? I'm saying we.
I want you to continue saying that.
We in California City,
Mojave.
Right.
Of course, we have it here also in Tehachapi as well. And I think that those are our three main rural health centers. And then, of course, we have the AHPN and then our hospital.
And that's been the benefit of the Adventist investment in the community. Obviously, there was a lot before the hospital opened financially in order to get the hospital up to par to be able to open the new hospital. But it wasn't just hey, we've opened the new hospital, come and see us, and we're going to treat you here in the ER, or use some of our 25 beds. It was not just that. It wasn't just, okay, now the hospital's open and we're done. It was a vision. And so now it's, hey, we're building this new imaging center. Correct. Hey, we want to build a physician's pavilion and a separate clinic set in front of the hospital. It's a vision to expand that campus.
That is correct.
And also pull in those services outside the Tehachapi area and inside the healthcare district. So that's been the impressive part to see, and we'd always hoped that would be the case, and to see that come to fruition, that it's not just we're sitting on our hands, we're good, we're a hospital, we're going to keep, but it's more like you're moving forward and you're trying to address the needs. I love it when
a plan comes together, right? There was a plan. There is a plan.
And again, the hospital couldn't have done it on its own. I mean, this is basically the coming together of a community. They see the needs. They're saying, hey, listen, we would like to ensure that those healthcare services are visible and present within our own community. If we don't have to travel outside, we don't want to.
Yeah.
And so, just as mentioned, we have the imaging pavilion, which, we're going to have a CT scan. I think it's 124 slice, an MRI machine, which we're really, really excited about. A lot of these services, it's really difficult to even find in some of our major cities.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the outpatient pavilion that we see coming on the horizon. So there are a lot of great things that are coming. Also, the mammography machine.
And now, what is an outpatient What did you call it just now? Outpatient?
Oh, outpatient pavilion?
Yeah, what is that?
Okay, so with the outpatient pavilion, it's basically being able to go and see your provider in an ambulatory or kind of a walk-in clinic. Mm-hmm. So you may schedule, say, your procedure, or say you would like to go and see your provider. You don't necessarily need to be admitted into the hospital. Mm-hmm. So what would happen is either you can schedule an appointment, or it could be a walk-in.
So it's a doctor's office adjacent to the hospital.
Yes, a doctor's office adjacent to the hospital, where you can actually see your doctor, mm-hmm. go in for a checkup or what have you, mm-hmm. and then leave and go home.
Kind of one-stop shopping.
Absolutely.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
As you went from Africa, and then we kind of jumped right to Tehachapi Valley, you had journeys in between.
That's correct. That's correct. So basically from Africa, I came back to the United States and kind of rested for a few months, and then got picked up to go ahead and run a hospital in Haiti, Port-au-Prince, Haiti.
I bet that was challenging.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, I say that being a layman, but you see the news and
yes.
the earthquakes and the famine and
Hurricanes.
the hurricanes and the poverty.
Yes.
My goodness.
And then the instability as well. Yeah. Haiti has always had a place within my heart. I love the people. Unfortunately, a lot of them are living under very, very difficult situations. So when I was actually called to Haiti, I was called because the hospital was on the brink of closing down. This was the last attempt at trying to go ahead and save it. And so I had gone out there. They sent me out there a couple of times to kind of do a site visit, see if I can identify what the problems and challenges for the hospital was, and then come back and report to leadership. So I was able to go and do that, got out there. I mean, I can kind of go down through the list of challenges. I mean, they had lost a very important contract, but even more, the staff hadn't been paid in 6 to 12 months.
Wow.
Yeah. Insurance companies had kind of blacklisted the hospital. The community had totally given up on the hospital. And then, I was walking into a place where the morale of the staff was terribly, terribly, terribly low. So the beautiful thing about God is what God oftentimes do is he kind of just he provides you previous experiences to get you prepared for your next step. Mm-hmm. And so Zambia prepared me for Malawi. And then Malawi, little by little, prepared me for Haiti. And so when I got to Haiti, I had a pretty good idea as to the direction that I needed to go ahead and take to help try to move that institution around. And so we were able to go and get the hospital kind of turned around. I had to take some very, very difficult decisions and take some very difficult steps. But within a very short period of time, within about a year, we got the hospital turned around. It was generating income. Insurance companies came back in. They started using our institution as a pilot for even a lot of their new initiatives. The staff morale just picked up. Matter of fact, I oftentimes kind of get choked up because nearing the end of the 3 years, we had so many patients that were actually coming through our institution. And the hospital was not being supported by the government. So all of the money that we're making was actually coming from the poor patients that were coming to the hospital and paying their little cash. Wow. Yeah, so we're able to, myself as well as like the leadership of the hospital, we're able to kind of restructure it in a way that it made sense for our community, because we didn't want our community to suffer and feel like it's cost prohibitive to be able to access care. At the same time, we were committed to providing the highest quality care to those patients that were coming. But I oftentimes kind of get caught up teary-eyed when I think about it was coming down to the end of, kind of my 3 years. We had made enough money to be able to take all of our staff to the beach. And a lot of our staff hadn't been to the beach in 20 to 30 years, despite the simple fact that they lived, it's an island. Yeah. But they never had enough disposable resources to be able to jump on a bus to go. And so we're able to go and take them out. And when I think about the older women that came out and got on that bus, I'm talking about we had some 70s, 80-year-old women. And I didn't think that they were going to want to even go to the beach. I was thinking that, probably a majority of our young staff are going to be the ones coming out. 70, 80-year-old women that were the first ones to get on the bus. Mm. And we were able to get them out to the beach. And they're the first ones to put their bathing suit on and jump in the water. Mm-hmm. And they played. And I can imagine for many of them, they had never had that opportunity, probably not in the last 20 years, because things have been really, really difficult. And just to see the hope that was actually kind of brought back to the staff, it just really kind of speaks to the commitment of the team and working together to ensure that, hey, listen, you know what? I know things were bad in the past, but we're going to work together to turn this institution around. And we did, and the community really appreciates basically the services that the hospital now provides.
And I think you talk about God preparing you for the next step, and then you come to Tehachapi, and it's very different, of course. But I think bringing those stories to us and helping ground us some more, right?
Yeah.
Because we have it. The United States of America is the best country in the end.
Let me tell you,
I know it is. Because I've traveled all over the world, been everywhere 10 times, and I can tell you that the United States, and actually Tehachapi, is a very, very special place.
It is.
But bringing those sorts of stories, and so how do you translate that into, making us better, taking us to that next level at Tehachapi Valley Adventist Health?
Well, I don't think that it's any news that Tehachapi's, the hospital we have is a critical access hospital, which means that we're still in not a fully rural spot, but we are away from large acute care hospitals. And so it's still basically the same concept, the same idea of ensuring that our community still will have the same access to quality care that maybe a large healthcare institution would actually have. And it's to ensure that if we don't necessarily have those skill sets actually on site, that we are connected. And that's the beautiful thing about the model that Adventist Health Tehachapi Valley is a part of, where we fall under Adventist Health, is that they're able to consolidate all of the strengths throughout the system. So that at any time, whenever Adventist Health Tehachapi Valley needs a certain specialist, that maybe we don't necessarily have the population to support that one specialist because it's maybe one of those one-off, that we could still pull on the strength of the system to ensure that our community still receives the necessary care.
So telemedicine, or maybe transfer down to Bakersfield. I know there's the AIS Cancer Center, which is part of the network.
Correct. So that's one of the beautiful blessings about kind of being a part of the system. Now, I know that there have been some challenges with it, but what I'm seeking to do is to ensure that AHTV, Adventist Health Tehachapi Valley, is still very responsive to our little community, and that whatever our needs are, we can still be able to go and provide those needs while still being a part of a larger system, but helping to go and take the best and the strongest parts of our system and feed it down so that we may not necessarily have a large acute care hospital, but we have the resources of a large acute care hospital here in Tehachapi.
I think we're very blessed to have you, Edward.
Oh, thank you so much, Greg.
Sure. And one thing that you and I we've talked about is you listen to the community, and that becomes woven into decision making and things that is the constant feedback that you get, and that's important for the entire organization.
Yes, that's correct. In line with that, I've learned over the years that I don't know everything. And I'm not going to assume that I know the needs of my community. And so I rely heavily upon individuals to basically share, what their needs are. I remember when I first kind of came to the hospital, one of the questions was, what are your priorities? Well, I told them, I usually kind of come with a blank slate. And the reason why I come with a blank slate is because I know that oftentimes there's an overarching goal from leadership, but I'm not going to pretend as though I actually know what the needs of my community. Yeah,
every community is going to be different, right?
Exactly.
It's by inherently going to be different.
Exactly. Yeah. And so what I do is I basically kind of take those ideas, and then what we do is we try to formulate a plan to ensure that we're able to go and help address whatever the needs are. So what I see my role here as is, first, what my boss would love me to do, which to me I think kind of comes natural because I love doing it, is to ensure that I'm available to our community. So whether it's community meetings, whether it's the farmers market, whatever it is, I want to be sure that I'm actually available for whatever the needs are of the community. Secondly, I want to make sure that I can support our different service lines. So as I take basically the needs of our community and I understand what the different service lines that we have and how they work, I want to make sure that I merge the two of them so that it kind of works seamlessly. Yeah. So that is basically what I see my job as.
It has to be successful. Whatever that service is, it has to be able to be sustainable.
Correct.
Here in Tehachapi. And I think we talk a lot about the maturation process of Tehachapi and where it's come, and obviously Adventist Health, the new hospital, was a big step in that maturing process, because that's changed the community, the face of the community a little bit as well. More folks willing to move here, or moving closer into the city specifically,
or staying in town, not moving away.
Yeah, they didn't. I don't have to go to retire to Florida because that's where all the good healthcare is at. I feel comfortable staying, in Tehachapi because I'm going to have this care. And we for so many years were trained to drive to Bakersfield for X, Y, and Z. I see now, for better, for worse, but people are saying, we really could use this at the hospital, and some of that stuff has come to fruition, and they're, I don't want to say being spoiled, but compared to where we were, we're spoiled now because we used to always have to drive for any kind of care, and to be able to get that, and that keeps more people up here. When you're staying here for care, you're staying here for meals, you're staying here for shopping, you're not having to leave. And so, it's a balance too when you want to bring those services in, but at the same time, will you have the volume? It's no different than my job, right, folks? Oh, a Costco would be great in Tehachapi. Well, it'd be convenient for you, but for Costco, they wouldn't make the money that they make in Bakersfield, because they don't have the numbers. But same sort of thing probably with the services too. It's got to make sure it pencils out in the long term.
Corey, I think what you did was you sort of kind of stirred a thought. In Africa, usually communities are developed around wells. So the very moment that you put in a well, you'll find that it will attract people around there because, of course, water is crucial to life. I oftentimes think about hospitals as that hospital as being that well, because the very moment that you kind of transplant that there, then you begin to build communities even around that hospital, because just as you mentioned, you don't have to go out for that care.
Yeah.
Especially if you have all the services that are important to that community, then the money will stay local.
Yeah.
And so it really kind of helps to develop areas. So,
well, part of our planning at the City of Tehachapi is the economic health of our community, and everything else kind of goes out from there, right? And so you sparked a thought with me with the well, right? Water, but downtowns, education, healthcare, recreation, keeping people in our town rather than going to Lancaster, Palmdale, where the tax rate is, 10.5% or whatever it is. Down at Bakersfield, you have to fight the trucks there and back. If you can stay home, you've saved that time, an hour each way. You've saved the fuel. You've saved the time that you can spend with your family. If you can do the shopping and the healthcare and all those different things here, then I think it's a win-win for everybody. And, I was thinking also with hospitals, people, they don't usually, when you're sending your kids to school, when they're school age, you're involved with the school district. And you're only involved with the hospital usually when you need care, right? You don't think about it. Thank God it's there. But getting people involved with the hospital, so being part of the community, I think that's it's a big win-win, right? Because you want it to be there when you need it, but you don't want to have to, think, oh, I wish I would have did this or wish I would have done that. Just being part of. So we're encouraging people that are listening.
Fantastic.
Be part of the community. Be part of the hospital, right? We have coffee with the mayor. We're inviting Edward to come and share his thoughts. Meet Edward, right? Meet all of us so that you can be part of the positive piece of Tehachapi.
I don't think that I could even say it any better. You're absolutely right, Greg. It's the simple fact that we cannot see ourselves as silos. We're all interconnected. And it does, if we are going to be strong, we're only strong as our weakest link. And so if we want to build a strong community, it's so important that as a hospital, our community knows that, hey, listen, we're going to be involved in establishing, or we're going to be involved in ensuring that our institution is able to, again, provide the greatest quality of care. Because when you have a strong hospital, you tend to have a strong community. When you have a strong community, then other things, there's a whole bunch of spinoffs that generally kind of take off. after that.
And you even brought it up when you were talking about your journey. I mean, you went from the East Coast to Loma Linda. Why?
Correct.
Because Loma Linda is one of the greatest medical centers and schools
Correct.
in the country. And that brought you out to California because of that healthcare piece.
Correct.
And we've got Loma Linda, UCLA, go down the list of some really top-notch medicals in California.
Yeah.
And so, even having that on a smaller scale in Tehachapi is an attractive piece.
There's even a story as to how I even got out to California. What I really appreciate about Loma Linda is basically their focus on ensuring that high-quality care is being provided both in our rural areas, of course at larger institutions as well, but they have a very, very global focus. Because I think that they realize that while we think that we are kind of sectioned off here in Tehachapi, things that happen outside these borders still impact what takes place within our city. And so if what we do is we think locally, but we act globally. And we just want to ensure that we provide good quality care here, but we also support basically those other institutions that also providing care on the outside as well.
And we do the same thing at the city. I've said many times, for the city of Tehachapi to be healthy is one thing.
Yeah.
But our neighbors
Correct.
need to be healthy also.
Absolutely.
It matters.
It does.
Right? If we're not working together, not fighting against each other,
Yes.
I should say, we're all going to win.
Correct.
Well, I'll tell you what, on that note, we've learned a little bit about your backstory, which is incredible. I love this international journey that's brought you to Tehachapi.
Thank you.
And the fact that Adventist Health is a faith-based organization that it brings, I don't know, something to me. I feel a little bit warmer, a little bit more connected.
Hope.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's something that I pull away from it. So I appreciate, everything that Adventist is doing here. And I just want to say welcome to Tehachapi. You've decided to call it home.
Yes.
This is where your career has brought you. And I think that we are very fortunate to have these life experiences that you're going to bring and work within the community. You've already done that in the first few weeks. I can't believe how many things I've seen you at that you've been able to say, no, it's important for me to be there,
Yes.
represent, and learn. And you want to hit the ground running, but absorbing everything that you can.
And maybe we'll get you out of that apartment into one of these new houses that developers are building in and around the city.
That wouldn't be very hard because when I started looking at the houses, I was like, man, I love Tehachapi.
it's a great place
We're
to
very
call home.
proud of our town.
And we're very happy to have a Tehachapi specific person. You have some great leadership at Adventist, but a lot of them are being pulled and
Yes.
they're working at multiple facilities. And to have kind of like, hey, this is our Tehachapi go-to guy, like that makes a big difference because as Key pointed out, you're the guy who's able to go to things and be in the community and make that connection.
And I just want to go ahead and add, I've already purchased my Tehachapi hat, and I think I'm going to go for round 2. So don't be surprised if you actually see me walking around town. Matter of fact, I took my Tehachapi hat with me on Saturday night to the stargazing. The problem was it was so dark, nobody can see the hat.
Yeah.
That made a perfect stargazing evening, right?
It was
That's
awesome.
what you want.
Right.
Well, Edward, thank you for joining us today, and welcome to Tehachapi.
Thank you so much, Key.
This has been a great conversation.
It sure has. I love it.
I love backstories.
Yeah.
And that's what I always kind of take away is because that's what makes us who we are.
Yeah.
So just appreciate everything that you've done internationally, the caring. I think that's what comes through. And everything that I heard was the quality.
Yeah.
We want to make sure your experience through Adventist is the highest of quality.
That's
so,
correct.
I mean, that's a takeaway for me right now. Guys, anything else we want to bring
Thank
up?
you, Edward.
It was a great conversation.
Thank you so much.
And folks, if you've got any questions, let me direct you to 2 places. We've got AdventistHealth.org with a /Tehachapi Valley, and it talks about all the different facilities and services that Adventist Health provides here in Tehachapi and in the region, and also on Facebook at Tehachapi Valley, and you can get updated on community information right there on the Facebook page. So again, Edward, thanks for taking the time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Key.
If you've got any questions, send us those emails. If there's something you'd like us to get to Edward, we'll do that. Send an email to media@TehachapiCityHall.com, and we appreciate your time, and we'll catch you again on a future episode of TehachaPod.
TehachaPod is a conversation about Tehachapi designed for the people who live here or who would like to know more about this mountaintop community. If you have a question you would like answered, email media@TehachapiCityHall.com. We will try to answer it on a future episode of TehachaPod.